can never get used to people hating you. And whatever people say, like even if you're a celebrity, there's a massive hate wave or people trying to cancel you. You just don't grow out of it. You just try to adapt. You try to live through it. It hits differently every time.
Marina McGilko. She's a millennial entrepreneur running 3 companies.
And she's co-founder of Linktree.
We're going to be learning from someone who has over 10 million subscribers.
Because there's a lot of people that want to create content. What do you think was that transition from just taking it as a hobby to now?
I think having a team. If I want to double down on growth, then I need someone to do something that I'm not good at. It gets really boring if I talk about one topic consistently for years. And for me, it's a long-term play.
How do you work on that yourself?
So first of all,
Marina, thanks so much for having me in your new and beautiful podcast studio.
thank you for coming over.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun researching this project this interview because there's like so many things that you're working on.
Oh yeah.
We were just talking about your company, LinguaTrip, and then you have your content business. And then like you were singing at one point in one of your videos. I don't know if that was, I didn't like fully see any other videos on you singing, but I don't know if that was like a serious thing. Yeah, it was like, it was professional. It was like, damn.
Thank you.
Is that just like a hobby or?
Yeah, I used to sing when I was a kid, like professionally on a stage, but.
In Russia?
Yeah, but then I had to give it up because I studied mathematics at school, so I had to kind of focus on my main subject, so I gave up singing.
Mathematics is, probably hard to do singing, be
a
professional singer and like an amazing mathematician.
Yeah, I used to dance in the theater, ballet professionally, singing professionally. But when I turned, I think it was 14 or 15, my parents were like, you have to get ready for your admissions exams. You have to focus on studying. So I had to give up almost all of my passion projects.
Oh man! So this is like your adult self trying to rekindle the things that you had to give up.
Yeah.
Are you like performing and stuff? Well, you're always performing, I guess.
This is my performance.
Is your performance.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So give me a little bit of your story, maybe for people that haven't heard about your story. You were born in Russia. Beyond studying mathematics, like what else? Like when did you come to the US and what's been that transition for you?
Born and raised in Russia. I moved here when I was 25. So
25?
9 years ago.
Oh, wow. I thought it was all earlier. Okay.
Yeah. So 9 years ago, pretty recent, it feels like.
Yeah.
We came because we started a company back in Russia, sending Russian-speaking students to English-speaking and German-speaking, Italian-speaking countries to do study abroad programs.
Right.
And that company was initially just an office, brick and mortar, people coming in, signing contracts. And we realized that in order to scale this, we need to become something like booking.com because it was problematic for me to start offices. I had to go to Moscow and smaller Russian cities. I didn't like travel. So we decided to build an online company from that. We have no IT background. We didn't understand how anything worked online, but we were lucky to meet our co-founder, Dmitry, he was a professional coder and he's a professional coder now. And we started that company together and we started fundraising in Russia. It wasn't successful, but we were introduced to 500 startups when we were back in Russia and they interviewed us and invited to come over to Silicon Valley. We came here, they invested 100K.
Wow.
And we just loved it here and decided to stay.
How did you get their attention? Because I mean, everybody has an idea. I'm sure there's so many people that have ideas in Korea, Russia, but like, what do you think it was that got their attention from all the way in Russia?
So first of all, we got lucky with the person who interviewed us because she just came back from, I think, Costa Rica studying Spanish. And she went through the whole process of finding the school. And she was like, oh, I had to go through Yelp, find the school with good reviews. Then I had to call them, email them. And it was such a painful process. Yeah. I understand the problem. I know what you guys are doing. So I like it. And the second thing, we've had that business for 4 years back then. And we were generating revenue.
Which is crazy in
Silicon Valley. Yeah.
They might even not even like that, right? Because once you generate revenue, it's like a real thing. So you can't even like tell the story.
Exactly. So I think they like that. It was small revenue, but they liked that. We tested the concept. We already had clients and they believed in us and invited to come over.
That's powerful. Yeah. Well, I think your story is so inspiring just because I just love that you're pursuing so many things. You have so many interests. We were just talking up in the kitchen that for whatever reason, like immigrants, we kind of tend to fixate on the traditional path, especially if you're like a first generation, because your parents bring you here, they want security for you.
Yeah.
Like the whole joke in Asia, it's like you're either a doctor or lawyer or a failure.
Because it's stable.
Mm-hmm.
Being an entrepreneur, being a YouTuber,
right,
up and down all the time.
Right. What was that conversation with like your parents? I don't know how much, because Asians, it's like tiger moms, tiger dads, and like you kind of have to do what they're telling you to do, right? I don't know how that is with like Russian, if you have traditional Russian parents, like what is that, and how did that impact what you're doing now?
Yeah, my dad is very traditional. He teaches at a Russian university, and he teaches management and systems and everything. So he's done his PhD.
Yeah.
So he went that professional route. My mom is an entrepreneur, so she understood my desire to build something on my own.
Oh, wow. Okay. So she was the one that was able to.
They were both still very skeptical.
I'm sure.
And my grandparents. They were like, how are you going to retire if you're building your own business? Like, what's going to happen to you in 10 years, in 20 years? My dad was really cautious. He's like, no way you're going to run a company. So yeah, there were those conversations. But I also think they thought we were not too serious about that. So
really? When you were doing the...
Because we started a company when we were 21.
Right.
So they're like, okay, let them play.
Yeah. And you started it with your husband now, right? Husband, so this was like, you guys were going all in, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, this is going to be my partner, but also coingling business together.
Exactly. Yeah.
We'll get into that a little bit more. I want to hear more about that. And then especially with like YouTube, like it's one thing to be in business, but it's another thing to be like, I'm going to be like a YouTuber when that didn't exist back in their day.
Yeah. It didn't, it wasn't a career back then.
Definitely wasn't a career. Yeah. So then you decided at this point you were doing your company and then you were creating YouTube content. Was that kind of your first foray into being a creator?
Yeah. So the thing is with building a company, so as I mentioned, we tried to fundraise, but it wasn't successful.
Yeah.
So I thought, let us have a plan B. And I'm all about having plan Bs, which is, if you talk to the best minds in the world, they tell you just focus on one thing. I'm all about having a plan B, plan C, plan D, just in case things go wrong. So my plan B was to get an MBA at an American university because I heard there are full-ride scholarships. Because I couldn't afford an MBA program that cost like hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I heard about that program. I actually got an opportunity award from the US government, which pays for all of your exams like GMAT, TOEFL, all of your application fees. And I got into 2 universities, Johns Hopkins and University of Florida, on a full-ride scholarship. But then 2 weeks later, we got this offer from 500, which was like what I wanted to grow our business. So I had to say no to my MBA in the US. But you know what I'm thinking now? Maybe there is a chance that I really want to do a PhD. I started my PhD.
Even now you're saying at this point. Oh, wow. Really?
Probably because I come from this academic background.
Sure.
I started my PhD in Russia. I did my first year and then we moved to the US. So I had to stop and basically cancel. My dad has a PhD. So I have three brothers, they're grandparents. So one of them is my grandparent and the other ones, I don't even know how you call them. One of them is a professor of physics at a university in Maryland. Another one has a PhD. Like I come from this background where everyone has a PhD. So I feel like I really want to explore that route. And I just realized that about myself like maybe a couple of weeks ago. So it feels brand new to me, but I started exploring some PhD programs.
How much of this, because I'm curious, I went through this work just quite recently as well about why I make certain decisions in my life. But how much of this for you is it something that you really feel like a calling for versus maybe getting approval from your parents based on what they want you to do?
100% that too. Like that affects everything that I do. Of
Even
course,
now,
yes.
But you're like already successful to anyone's measure, and it still feels that way.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. That, but also when I started researching modern PhD programs, like how marketing, like social media marketing and what people say online affects your company, how it affects your image, like all of the narrative that appears in social media. This is exactly what I've been doing.
Yeah.
And like, if you can formally sit down and just do your research and explore what's going on with the companies, and that's your PhD work, like this, this is exactly what I want to do.
But don't you think you already have your PhD in terms of experience?
In terms of experience, yes. In terms of scientific research, no. There are so many things I can learn.
Okay. So like it's the...
we'll see. I don't even know like what kind of workload that is. I need to explore that because I have 2 small kids. I can't really, just do whatever I want.
And you've got like what, three businesses, and you're doing all of these things.
Well, LinguaTrip is mostly my husband now,
okay,
and the team. I have my media company, which has 3 channels. I have a course. I have brand deals. I speak at conferences. That is a separate business. But there I can control my hours. I can always stop and say no to things. But with kids, you can't do that.
You can't do that. My brother just had 2 kids now. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your transition to YouTube. So you started creating, this was like your plan B amongst like plan D, C, E, all that stuff.
That was just, let's document my admissions journey. That was my first video was how to take a GMAT. And I was like, I just wanted someone around me who's going through the same thing because none of my friends were taking GMAT or TOEFL or writing personal statements. So this is how I started my channel.
So it's like more documenting rather than trying to like teach something to someone. Okay. Yeah. And then was there a point where you said, oh my God, like this is a business. This is not just me documenting. What was that tipping point for you?
I think it actually happened in 2015, when we came here. I started documenting our life here in Silicon Valley, how we're building the startup.
Yeah.
And then we realized a lot of customers who booked trips with us, they came from my blog. And I'm like, wow, okay, I actually need to put more focus in it because it becomes a marketing channel for LinguaTrip.
Yep.
And during the accelerator, you have to have this to show this hockey stick.
Oh, this is during 500. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, let's double down on making videos about, programs and study abroad.
Got it. And then you continued, I guess, now into like Silicon Valley Girl. You have all of these different channels. Was there anything differently that you did? Because there's a lot of people that want to create content and they either can't get traction or they're not taking it seriously. What were you doing differently when you saw YouTube as a business vehicle, when you took it professionally? Was there anything different in terms of your mindset or maybe the equipment that you were investing in? Like, what do you think was that transition from just taking it as a hobby to now, millions and millions of followers that you have?
I think having a team. I started delegating because I realized my superpower is to be in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And if I want to double down on growth, then I need someone to do something that I'm not good at, like editing.
Yeah. So editor, was that your first hire?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I hired an editor. Now I have I have a manager who sometimes helps me with research and some ideas. I have a thumbnail designer. I have a sales manager who talks to brands. So I have a team helping me because I realized, I like being in front of the camera, but I can't edit. I'm not good with Photoshop. I could learn it, but I'd rather focus on something that I really like.
Yeah. And I've noticed you transferred your passion for diversity also into your YouTube channels because you have 3 different channels.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like, well, yeah, you're saying no already, right? Just when I said that, you're like, oh no. But this is what I've heard is like, you always want to focus when it comes to business or media. What are the things that you've learned, if you have any like lessons learned from that of diversifying? Do you think it actually has helped you like a net positive or?
I think so. Because for me, it gets really boring if I talk about one topic consistently for years. And for me, it's a long-term play. It's not like I want to grow in 2 years and that's it. I want this to be consistent for me. And sometimes I get burned out from, just making podcasts. Last year I stopped for, I think 6 months on Silicon Valley Girl channel. I just stopped. I didn't want to talk about business. I wanted to travel with my kids. I wanted to see my family. I wanted to explore the world. I didn't want to talk about business.
Right.
So I just stopped for 6 months, but I had my 2 other channels where I could just talk about anything or something that I'm passionate about.
Got it.
So I feel like for me, this actually makes so much sense to just switch my focus. I can do 3 channels at a time.
Yeah.
But with some videos, I'm putting in more passion versus the other ones that week, and then I'm switching between channels.
Yeah, I agree with you too. It's tough, especially if you have a channel that's like only specifically talking about something like tech.
I don't know
or
how people
health.
do that. Yeah.
It's tough. Yeah. Whereas you have one channel which is like under your name, and that can be around your life, your passion.
Yeah,
so
anything.
that seems more sustainable, I guess, in the end.
Totally.
But the other thing is around like having your name in the brand also. This is something that a lot of freelancers maybe learn a little bit too late, is that they have their name on their agency or whatever, and then they can't sell it, right? They can't get away from that name.
Well, now you can. There are companies that are buying channels.
Are there?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me more about that. I didn't know.
There are a couple of companies who have raised substantial amount of money, and they're buying big channels, but they're buying. So basically, they take over the channel. They ask the YouTuber to still be the face of it, but they take over everything that's associated with the channel. Like if a YouTuber has a product and has a funnel that has to be managed, brand deals, ads, editing, they take over everything, so that creator only puts out a certain amount of videos in the first like 2 or 3 years during the transition period. And then maybe they try to introduce new faces. So I've heard of that concept. So I feel like the industry is evolving, and people understand the value of a channel that has a face, that has a name, the brand that is known, the brand that is trusted by YouTube algorithm.
Right.
So I feel like there's going to be more. So I'm the first creator who raised a venture round. There are certain creators who've already sold their channels to those companies. I don't know if I can say that publicly, but you can Google it.
Yeah.
There are probably news out.
Sure.
So we see how this segment of the market is actually evolving, just like the standard companies market.
That's interesting.
So it's exciting. Yeah.
So that's a relatively new thing. And I agree with you. Like, even if you poured a lot of money, you can't replicate the trust and the loyalty that someone has created in a channel. But how do you value that, like for a company?
You can look at the cash flow and just give it a multiple.
Like an EBITDA multiple or something like that?
Yeah.
Oh. And what are the multiples of something like that? Is that relatively well known?
I don't know if I could say. I like.
You don't know, or
I know some of the deals, but I don't think I can discuss them publicly.
Yeah, maybe not. Because I think like a B2B company is like 10 to 12. B2C company is probably like 6 to 8. Services is like 3. I guess it's somewhere in between then, I guess. That's fascinating. Wow. Is that something that you're potentially pursuing, like something that you'd be interested in now that you have 3 channels?
I could. I don't know. Like, so it always depends on how it's going to work out for a creator. I feel like it's a very important aspect. If it's going to be, if it's 2 years of video making, or if it's just a month, then, it depends on how the deal is structured, I think.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we don't have to talk any about it. It seems like, you're still kind of going through the process right now, but yeah, that's an exciting time. Yeah. So it's channels that are actually being acquired. Interesting. So for any advice for creators that are coming up, at this point, you've got 3 very successful channels, and they're also in different niches. So it's not like this was like a fluke. You have a system, you have a strategy that has clearly worked after all of these years. If you were to kind of look back from the person that was like giving advice on picking, GMAT guides and everything like that. If you were like, okay, you can do this like 4 times faster if you follow these guidelines that, the Marina now knows.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think those key things would be to your younger self?
Niche down.
Yeah. More.
Even more. Because even if you look at my channels now, so Lingua Marina, the channel that eventually I realized it should only be about English language for non-English speakers who are struggling with accent and like all of this, like understanding American culture. But if you look at that channel, I started with GMAT, TOEFL, then raising money for your company, then getting into Cambridge because my friend got into Cambridge. So it was like, I was just exploring everything. And you just, there is a vlog from Singapore. And you just, exactly. And if I made less experiments and was more conscious about my strategy, which back then I had no strategy. I was like, let's just post whatever.
Sure.
Which is great when you start a channel. You get to explore, you get to feel your personality, where you're good at, where people see value in you, and which types of content. But the thing is, I still have this in me, and it's really hard for me to niche down and focus. But I see that when people focus, like with Instagram, if you focus on one particular type of content, my friend is doing that now, and he's grown by 600,000 followers in 2 months on Instagram, because you make reels, has a very specific format, has a very niche topic, English, complicated English words, and he's been growing like crazy. Could I do that? Yes. Would I get bored in 2 weeks? Yes.
Probably, right.
And start doing something else.
Sure,
and that's my problem. And I totally realize it. And I think it kind of, it doesn't help me grow.
Well, I think one thing that you should commend yourself on is, people talk about product market fit, and then they talk about founder product market fit as well. And for you, it seems like you've applied that to even your content strategy and your media company as well. Like, you knew just doing one niche is probably like a good idea, but it was just maybe you knew yourself, right?
Yeah.
You were self-aware enough not to do that.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. Okay, so niching down, that's one. What else do you think you would share?
Being consistent, looking at what already exists on YouTube, because I feel like some people want to start a channel and they think they have to be super unique, talk about things that no one has ever talked before, come up with a very weird format that is brand new, like overcomplicate things. And the thing is, there's already demand on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. And all you have to do is satisfy that demand, create supply. And yes, 20% of the time you experiment, but 80% of the time you look for whatever people are looking for, what are their problems, and you try to make content to help those people.
Yeah. We think that we have like these unique problems, but you could talk about like kittens or like knitting, and you'll still have like this massive audience is kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah. No, even like if you're talking about kittens, let's look at videos that get millions of views with kittens.
Right.
Are they just running around? Or maybe they're being fed something. Maybe they're with their mom. There are certain areas where videos get more views. So ask your kittens to do whatever is getting more views.
Do you think the analogy or the strategy of, and we'll talk both as well, is of finding which content you should talk about or what channel topic you should focus on is similar, if not the same, as what company you should start and what problem you should solve? Or do you think those are two different things?
I think those are two different things, because a lot of YouTubers start without realizing what's the product and what's the company. Like they just want to start creating content. I think it's later on that you realize, oh, I could, my followers are asking me for this all the time. Maybe that could be a product because it's a very niche type of content. So we'll stay with this broader topic on YouTube, but pack something that is meant for a smaller audience, pack it into a product and sell it.
Right.
But if you're a company and you need to start a YouTube channel to grow your traffic, then it's a different strategy. You just go after videos that are already trending and you're like, just remake them.
Yeah, it's more of a machine rather than like having your personal heart into it, right? I think I saw a video of you also explaining the kind of the Venn diagram of how to know what business you should start as well. Do you remember which one I'm talking about? You had like what the market needs, and then
how if the market is growing or shrinking, that type of thing, what people are asking you for, what's your expertise, what are the problems associated with a business.
So it's expertise of maybe someone's experience, skill set. The other one was like, is there a big enough market? And then
is it growing?
Is it growing?
So
that's
important.
Okay.
As a person who's been in a shrinking market, study abroad is actually a shrinking market, like those language programs.
Right.
It's just so, it doesn't feel rewarding at all when you're putting all your effort and it's just shrinking with COVID, with regulations, with what's going on in the world. It's just becoming smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
But if you put the same amount of effort into the market that's growing like crazy, like we said, the obvious examples would be crypto or like AI.
Yeah.
You just do a tiny small effort, but because the market is exploding, you're exploding with the market and you're getting exposed to all of the opportunity. But if your market is shrinking, yes, you could be enthusiastic enough to push your company to the forefront of that, market, but it's still shrinking.
Yeah. So you don't believe in this idea that like it doesn't matter what niche you pick, you can still be a billionaire or centimillionaire as long as there's this example of like a billionaire in India, I think, that made concrete business, and he made like $1 billion.
Well,
or
that's a
something like
huge
that.
business. Concrete, like everyone needs to build houses.
True. Yeah.
The thing is, sometimes we're passionate about something that is a shrinking market, and I don't think it's a good idea.
Right. I guess there's a difference between boring, which I think about concrete business, versus shrinking or small market. Yeah, that's true.
Like if you have ambition to just when we started this business, my ambition was let's just help people study abroad because I was so passionate about it.
Sure.
But then if you think about the business long term, yes, you're going to lose that passion maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years. So you have to be able to grow a company to a state where you can hire professional management, professional people to run it. But if the market is shrinking, like all of the professionals are actually leaving the market. So you either have to pivot, which we did, or, shut down your company.
Yeah. What are some other trends that you would look for? I don't know if your desire, whether it's the PhD route or if you might start another business, what are some trends that you'd be looking for? I know you talk about this sometimes in your videos as well.
Yeah, I would just look for a problem that really exists. Sometimes people come up with problems and they're like, oh, let's create this.
Right.
It feels like a huge problem. I would try to solve a problem for myself, for my friends, see if it's working, see if it really exists, if they're willing to pay for it. When I talked to Noah Kagan, he said this: you can run certain experiments, like even post on Reddit, like I want to do this for you. And they've tested a gazillion of ideas, and they know when the idea is good. You just make one post, but you have so much inbound,
right?
You can cope with it. So that's a great test. Like asking your friends, "Can I do this for you?" And your friends like, "Oh yeah." Like when I tell people here, we need, professional drivers for our kids because I don't understand how you can handle if you have 3 kids and you have to drive everyone to their after school classes, and everyone's yeah, we need this.
Yeah.
Then it's a good idea, but then you dig deeper and start understanding the market, how it works. But I think the initial thought should be like, I'll ask my friends, I'll ask myself, would I pay for it? And if the answer is yes, then, go and explore.
Right. Not to say that if you don't want to pay for that there's not a big enough market, I guess, but you're saying it's easier to start with your own problem.
If you're a first-time entrepreneur, because if you're a second time, third time, you've been through the process, then it's a lot easier. But if you're just starting out, like how else is there another way to understand what kind of problem there is in the market? Like just by looking at market research? No, that wouldn't make sense.
Because it's like, what is your competitive advantage? Right. And if you're a
you
first time entrepreneur,
don't know how to run a business, you don't know how to hire people. Then the only thing that's left is the problem that you're passionate about, that you know how to solve.
Yeah. Didn't YC change their criteria now or something where they'll now only accept founders, or they'll only interview and accept founders if they've been in, at least one founder has to have been in the exact industry for like a minimum of a certain number of years. I remember Hermosa talking about that.
But I remember they mentioned that during, like we had 2 interviews with YC, and they always ask, what's your background?
Right.
Why are you the person who's going to push this exact idea? And they were always looking for an answer. Oh, I've been in this market for a while now. I understand it. I know people in the industry, etc.
Yeah. I also interviewed, didn't get in, but I don't know how they make that decision in 5 minutes. It's like, it's so fast.
I know, for me now, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
The shrinking market.
So you think it's the market?
Exactly. Yeah. That 100%. If we pitched something different and we had traction there, like even if we started with just online courses and had a model, how we work with creators now, etc., I think we could have gotten 10 years ago. When was it? 9 years ago?
Yeah, it's a while ago, right?
Yeah.
But what about the idea of like, it's the founders and you invest in the jockey and they'll figure out a problem?
Yeah, and that's the thing. My husband and I, so he's the CEO, I'm also the major shareholder. All of our background is was just study abroad back then, nothing else.
Right.
So how do you know if we're good founders?
True. That's true. Yeah. You kind of have to bet on that. Exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. Shifting more towards, well, actually, speaking of competitive advantage, one thing I wanted to ask you is every creator or founder, they have this one almost like hidden competitive advantage that they don't abruptly talk about. It's their core competency, something that they're like world class at that gives them some sort of a advantage. Whether it's a soft skill, whether it's, an actual hard skill. What do you think that's been for you? And has that changed over time?
As an entrepreneur or?
Could be as an entrepreneur, it could be as a content creator, something that gave you some sort of a advantage or something that you can call yourself like, okay, this is what I'm world class at. And it could be like a combination, right? I don't know if you saw, if you read Scott Adams, where he talks about this idea of like, you can either be the top 1% of a field, like LeBron James for basketball or Warren Buffett, or you can combine and be like the top 5% or top 10% of 3 skills and combine those things. And that would make you very, unique. That would give you an advantage. So let's say like, I don't know, for you, it could be content.
That's a good question. I feel like probably content, probably being consistent and just, I work a lot.
Okay, so work ethic.
Yeah, I think just working all the time. Like I had my first baby. I was in front of the camera 2 weeks later. I had my second baby. I was in front of the camera 2 days later. I worked the day before I gave birth.
Sure.
When I talk, because also this is something my investors mentioned, because they were like, when we were thinking about investing in you, we saw that you never stopped even when you had kids. That means you're super passionate about what you're doing. So I feel like it's the work ethic and just learning. And I've been doing this for 9 years.
Sure.
And this is what my husband also, because it's hard for me to assess myself like that. But my husband says that my main competitive advantage is that I work a lot.
Okay. That is one. I think the content for sure, but also maybe because the way you started, now you probably don't even need a competitive advantage because your competitive advantage is your audience probably and your brand. But maybe when you started out, as you were someone from Russia at 25.
And the timing also, 2014, brilliant time to start a YouTube channel.
Timing is huge. Yeah.
Just like now, we're going to say like 10 years later, we're going to say 2024 was a great time to start a YouTube channel.
Right, or TikTok.
It's going to be so much more saturated. But I think 2014, it wasn't, especially in Russian language, not a lot of content about GMAT or TOEFL or
for sure.
The US admissions.
For sure. And it's your story also, right?
Yeah.
Whether you got there by chance or by your own admission, like having those 3-4 things probably was.
Yeah. And
I
think timing is huge. Also, we were like the second Russian speaking startup out of 500 startups.
Really?
Yeah. So all the Russian media was like, oh, wow.
Oh, that's cool.
This company that got into Silicon Valley.
Yeah. So they kind of gave you that boost up of media and press.
Yeah. So timing, because if now somebody gets in, it's okay. Well, people been there. They've done that before.
Sure.
And back then it was like, wow, what's going on?
Yeah. Mental health. I want to shift there a little bit with, how many channels that you're working on right now. The first thing that I would imagine is hard for you was, maybe it wasn't, is that criticism that you get when you first start. I remember there was a thing by Jessica Livingstone, I think, like she was wife of Paul Graham.
Yeah.
And she said that if you're not getting some sort of hate online, or if you're not getting criticism, you're probably not generating enough awareness or attention. You're not doing something right. But it's still hard, right, for mental health. So earlier on, and maybe even now, you're having some difficulty with it. Is that something? Do you have any strategies in terms of how to deal with that these days? Do you look at comments at all?
I used to block a lot of people.
Really?
Back in the day.
On YouTube? Can you block people on YouTube?
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I would block people like crazy so my vlog would come out on Friday, and my Russian channel was growing pretty fast.
Yeah.
So this is where I was getting my first hate.
Yeah.
And I would just sit and block people like crazy. And if you look at my blocked list on my Russian channel, it's huge. And then I have this top list of words, and there are all kinds of Russian swear words that you can think of.
Yeah.
So I started blocking people. It's been a process. I feel like you can never get used to people hating you. And whatever people say, like even if you're a celebrity, if there is a massive hate wave or people trying to cancel you, you just don't grow out of it. You just, you try to adapt, you try to live through it. But I feel like every time it kind of hits.
Sure.
It hits differently every time. Sometimes we're like, okay, it also depends on how you feel about yourself at this stage of your life. If you just, when I was in my first trimester, I was pregnant with my second baby. I felt horrible, hormones over the roof. And somebody hates me, of course I will overreact. If everything is well, I'm running my companies, kids are healthy, everything's going well, somebody hates me, I'm like, okay,
sure,
they're having a bad day.
Right.
So it really depends on when it hits you.
But it's somewhat good because it's something you can control. I feel like you can never control how many people are going to put hate comments online. But at least it's comforting to know that you can control how you perceive it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have babies and all this, so not everything's going to be right. How do you work on that yourself?
So first of all, I still read the comments. I wanted to say sometimes when I feel really low, I don't read the comments. Like I would take 2 or 3 weeks off, just not really, videos come out. Whatever.
Why read the comments at all though? Do you feel like it's helpful for the
connection
content?
with the audience? Yeah, because I work for them. I want to make sure they actually enjoy the content. I want to hear what they think. It's like a conversation. So you do read the comments. I don't understand people who are like, I never read the comments. Like, why do you put out content then?
What about like content managers that can give you the most important, kind of like assistants reading your email?
I used to have it. Yeah, I used to have it, but I still don't feel like it's helpful. So I still go through comments just to feel whatever is going on with the audience, because there are those subtle things.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes when I feel really low, I just don't read the comments.
I know. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. I mean, the comments that hit the worst though are like, if somebody was like saying something ridiculous, right? It wouldn't even, it's so far away. But when there's like somewhat of like a truth to it, you're like, oh, you're like,
how did they know?
Oh yeah, it's like, it's kind of true. It's like,
that's true. Especially like I said, if you're feeling really bad at this moment of your life, maybe something's wrong with your company. Like we were failing during COVID, like the crazy things. You have to lay off people, and then people are laughing at you, ha ha ha. So you scam those investors. You raised money from them. You typical Russian, whatever.
Is it mostly Russian people that are targeting you for that reason?
Well, for the investors, I don't even know. Like I get comments from both sides. Yeah. But I feel like American, I don't even know. American haters are like, she's just dumb. Russian haters are more specific.
They know how to hit the hard spots, right? They know your sensitive spots.
It's different. Yeah, but hate is hate.
Oh man, that's surprising. I thought it would be because like I feel like I get a lot of support from the Asian community, particularly like Koreans if they see like another creator, because there's not a lot of Russian creators either, right? So I would figure they would have.
Well, in English, in Russian, there are a lot of creators.
Oh, right.
And it's not something that's respected in the society as well. Something you have to understand about Russian culture, that being a creator is not appreciated. Being a doctor,
just like me.
Very traditional. Being a doctor, being a teacher, being someone who helps society physically. Creators are not respected.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Well, maybe some creators, but in general, I just watched this video. Somebody did analysis of the downsides of being a creator. Yeah. And a Russian-speaking creator. So most of the people who think you're not doing anything, you're just wasting society's money.
Really? Even though you're educating people, they don't see that as, I mean, you're not creating content on like silly things. You're actually helping people learn English and develop a better life. Yeah, it's funny. You know what's funny about those comments though is I get comments for like when we're doing advertising on our apps. And then when you reach out to them personally, like even on Facebook Messenger, they're like, oh my God, like, no, we like your app. Like, sorry.
Some people would do that.
Problem. They'll never say that stuff to you in person. Yeah. You know, if they were in a Costco.
Oh yeah, never. You, just, never. Yeah.
They're hidden by the anonymity, right? Yeah. Are you relatively like, I don't want to, maybe it's fame, like the way you, I guess that's the right way to phrase it. Is there a bit, apart from online hate, is there anything that you find difficult about that? Like, do you, when you go like out in the world and people like recognize you or anything like that, is that something that you've gotten more comfortable with, or is that something that is never easy?
No. So first of all, I don't get recognized that much. If I go out, maybe a couple of people come up, but not like some people can't go out at all.
Sure.
So it's not like that level. And normally they're very nice people. They're like, oh, Marina, thank you so much for your videos.
Right.
But sometimes if my kids are misbehaving and I have to tell them something in a strict manner, I'm always thinking, if someone's watching and they're judging me for my mothering techniques, that gets into my mind.
Sure.
And also when you're a public person, people expect you to behave the way they want you to behave. Like they want you to say certain things. They want you to support certain things. But there you have to be like super careful because, yeah.
Why?
Because if you say one thing that you believe in, there will be 50% of people who disagree with you.
You mean like values or your opinions in politics?
Anything, vaccines, whatever. Like there are those controversial topics, but sometimes people are like, why haven't you even talked about that? Why haven't you mentioned that? And like, I'm trying to, speak about those things within my family circle and not publicly. I don't have to speak about everything publicly, but if you're a public person, people expect you like they want to know you. And I understand that. If you watch someone, you want to know what he or she thinks about a problem that bothers you. And if that person just ignores that problem, that kind of looks deceiving to you. I don't know. It doesn't.
Depends. It depends, right? Like if how much expertise do they have in it? I don't think anyone should just give their opinion for the sake of giving an opinion.
Exactly.
Like if you have
and that's
expertise,
what I think. But some people don't think that. They're like, you have to speak about this.
Right. Have you talked about like the whole Russia and Ukraine thing at all? Or is that just something you're like, that's one of those things where
that's one of those
there's no win there pretty much, right?
Yeah, well, it's a hard topic.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. That's a cue to move forward to a different topic. Another thing that I really appreciate about the work that you've done is, and I think why people are attracted to your content is the transparency that you have. Particularly around like sharing your income, your personal finance.
I stopped doing that.
Did you? Is that a reason or?
Too much. People like, again, I feel like, I played this game of let's try to become as famous as possible. Let's make all the most viral shorts in the world. Like in 2022, 80 million views a month. That was crazy. Everyone would come up in the street. Oh, I just saw your TikTok, and I will be just driving, and they will be waving from other cars. I was like, okay, I get it. That's cool, but do I really want to go that route? I don't know. And so I think 2022, 2023, I was like, okay, I don't really want to become a celebrity because my dream, 2022, I told my husband, I want us to go to Target to do our shopping, and I want them to close Target because of everyone wants to take a picture. Wow. That was my ambition in 2022.
That was not that long ago.
Yeah, but then I kind of started experiencing that.
Yeah,
and I didn't feel comfortable because again, every step is being judged. Everything that you make is being watched. Everything is being discussed in the media.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable.
So you got a little bit of a taste. You're like, oh, maybe this is not. Maybe the water's too hot for me right now.
Yeah. So I don't feel like I'm either ready or maybe I wasn't built for that. Wasn't made for that.
What was the thing that drove you to want that in the first place, though?
Just this desire.
To
just try. What does it feel like to be famous? But then I started reading. I remember Tim Ferriss he wrote a huge blog post on how people would pretend to be his drivers at the airport because you can actually download the list of people flying. So he always flies he asks his assistant to book a taxi under a different name because people will come up with a tablet saying Tim Ferriss, and you would sit in the car and they will just hijack you. Like he wrote about those stories. I remember there was a creator who got killed. I think it was in Canada. No?
Which one?
There was a creator, and there was a guy who was obsessed with her, so he came to her house and killed her. And after reading those stories,
I
was like, that's weird. And like Casey Neistat, he told a story where he just had a newborn baby, and people would just come knock on his door asking for a selfie at 9 p.m.
Oh my God.
And when I started reading all those stories, I was like, okay, No
wonder you live so far away from everything. I was like, damn, it takes so long to get here. I was going to miss my flight.
No, I don't feel like I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't think anyone is. It's just...
It's a trade-off. Do I want to make this trade-off?
Right.
I don't know. With, again, 2 small kids.
Yeah. Did that change, you think, once you had kids that were growing up?
Absolutely. When we lived in San Francisco, we didn't have kids. I used to show our apartment, our building, everything. People knew where I lived. Everybody knew where I lived.
Wow, that's so crazy. Even me thinking about that, it's like
I didn't care. But then you have kids and you become more responsible.
No doubt. Yeah.
And
no doubt.
Again, I never had any issues with my followers. But after reading all of the stories, I'm like,
right.
How am I protected? I can't hire private security right now.
Right. And you're saying your followers, like it's 10 people. You've got millions of people following you. So you just don't know who
exactly
is going to be the bad bunny in that pool.
Yeah.
So you were chasing fame, and we were just talking upstairs as well around kind of your relationship with money.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about Noah Kagan as well, to bring this back full circle. Like, I also have a big problem with that, just because coming from an immigrant background where your parents had to start over, not coming from a lot of money, it's tougher even as you have more money to spend it, just because there's like the inner child fear of you losing everything.
But there is also this child who wants to explore the world and try all the things that were inaccessible.
Teach me, because there's a lot of people listening, I'm sure.
I don't think my teachings are going to be any good, because I made
You'll say yes
some
to
bad
everything.
financial mistakes.
Okay.
No, we got a new car, which I will never ever do again. I just wanted a new car. Because
new, like just completely new. You're
brand
saying.
new.
Okay.
Out of the dealership. Very bad mistake. Never do that.
Why?
It lost 50% of its value in 2 years. Who does that? I feel like, I also, at that stage, I wanted to try things. Flying business class is different because it's your comfort, especially if you're flying for 15 hours. And I try to pay for all of my flights with miles now.
Yep.
There are certain ways you can accumulate those miles. Clothes, brands. Oh my God. My husband and I, we would go to Louis Vuitton like every 2 weeks to get something, just because, you can finally do it. You can finally get this sense of luxury. Now I'm selling all of that stuff. And again, it lost 70% of its value.
Yeah.
Like, how dumb we were back then. Why didn't we buy Apple stocks? Why didn't we buy, LVMH stocks? Why did we buy this stupid jacket?
Yeah.
And not so, again, but like, I understand why we did it. Not because we were trying to, be fashionable or whatever. We just wanted this luxury.
Sure.
Let everyone see the Louis Vuitton brand.
Right.
And it was, again, I feel like that was a stage of my life that I had to go through and try that and see the consequences of that as well.
Was that also recent, like 2021, 2022?
2019.
2019,
20.
Yeah.
Then I feel like I slowed down. I realized, maybe, yes, you can have 2 bags that are, great and expensive and have them for many years, but buying a t-shirt that costs $1,000, maybe not the best idea in the world.
Yeah.
That, but I feel like this is in my culture as well. Yep. We try to, once we start making money, we want kind of everyone to know that we're making money.
Yeah.
But then what I really like about American culture, and this is what I'm still trying to understand, is that, and there are good and bad things about that. The good thing, you're focused on building wealth. You're focused on, saving for the next generations, investing money, investing in something that appreciates versus investing in a brand new car. But at the same time, if you look at the level of service in the US, because you don't appreciate those things like beauty, like even like if you go to Ritz-Carlton in the US and you look at the plates and they're just like random.
Kind of random, yeah.
Yeah. And if you go to Ritz-Carlton Paris, the place will be porcelain. It will be the best ever plates you've ever eaten from. So I feel like there are good and bad things to that. But it's the American culture. People came here to work, to make money, to build wealth, not to enjoy. They came from Europe. They kind of, I don't know if they ran away, but they left that culture behind of like enjoying life. And this is something that I miss here. People are not really, they're not having this dolce vita like in Italy or France.
Sure.
When you dress up and you go out and you wear this perfume just because you want. And again, this is part of the culture. I mean, you get it in LA, but you don't really get it here in the Bay Area.
Yeah, especially not here. Right?
Yeah, not here.
Nowhere. Yeah. But yeah, I get it. I think the history of America, it's a relatively modern country, right? If you compare that to thousands and thousands of years of Europe and Korea also. I don't know exactly too much the history of Russia, but maybe you can teach me that. But with Korea, it was such a poor country after the war in 1950s that when we started to prosper in like the 90s or even early 2000s, people had all this money. And then now it's like, oh, now it's like for the first time in Korean history, there's a consumerism and everything. So people do spend
Same with Russia.
money. And Russia is the same as well. So I
After
can understand
Soviet
that.
Union collapsed and some people became what we know now, oligarchs.
Yep.
All the mega yachts.
Yeah.
All the planes. Yeah, totally. And yes, this is in our culture. We have this rebound effect because we had, 80 years of Soviet Union, no access to foreign goods. My mom used to have this, sweatshirt from Germany that her uncle brought her because he was a sailor, and she still has it.
Oh, wow.
It's something, Levi's jeans. It's like gold. That was like gold for her back then. So I feel like, and I grew up my family was relatively poor. We were renting like one bedroom for all of us in an apartment, in a shared apartment. So I didn't get access to a lot of luxuries. And of course, when I started making money, I wanted to experience that. I wanted to see what the world is about.
I totally get it. I think if anything, it's a great lesson that you can pass to your children, right?
Yeah.
Because you've been on both sides, you're like, okay, like kids probably gonna grow up with some comfort now, but we've been poor, we've been rich, and we have all these things. And this stuff doesn't really make you that much happier. And you can kind of have that story to tell to your children, I guess, as they
and you have to make your lifestyle sustainable. Like, oh, if your income is up, I'm buying all those things. If my income is down, I'm selling all those things at a discount. No, this is not how it works.
How do you think you'll teach money to your kids?
I will definitely teach them investing. I've already invested for them. I bought them some stocks and bonds in their names.
Powerful. Okay. So you won't be giving them crazy allowances either, I guess. You'll just be...
No, but I really want to be able to pay for their education.
Yeah.
I don't feel that student loan is a good thing. I feel like it just gives you this burden. And when you're 20 something, I want them to experiment with the things they wanted to do. Because if I had a student loan at 21, I would never start a company, because this doesn't look like a great way to pay off your debts. You're starting a company, because it's very unpredictable. So what I really want to do for my kids is to pay for their education so they can have this freedom of doing whatever they want.
Yeah, powerful. Last question for you. This is something that I'm sure a lot of creators, maybe even you, still deal with, but I certainly deal with it, is the imposter syndrome. So you get to a certain level of success and you start questioning yourself. You start thinking about, like maybe I shouldn't be here. Do I deserve this? And you put this glass ceiling on yourself. And I've started to do a little bit more work on why I feel that way. But I'd be curious to get your side of the story of like whether you feel that at all as you were getting more successful. And have you kind of self-analyzed why you feel that way? Because that gets in the way of so many people. Like we are often our biggest obstacles when it comes to succeeding. And I don't know if you have that, but curious.
I do. No, I do. I think my channel is maybe top 10, top 20 in the world, like American world of YouTubers, people speaking, like me speaking about English language. And I'm not a native speaker. And I've only lived in the US for 9 years.
That's which is also crazy. I was shocked that you said 25 that you came here.
Yeah, like, do I have the right to talk about English? There are native speakers out there who are professional teachers with a degree. I am a person from St. Petersburg, Russia, with no degree in linguistics. Can I talk about English? I don't know. Like, but is there a law? No. Do I make mistakes? Yes. Am I super passionate about this topic? Do I want to inspire other people? Yes. So it just comes to this. Yes, of course I have this problem. And I know I make mistakes in English and my English is not perfect. But I also know that my story is super inspiring to people like me. Like, would I want to watch my videos when I was like 19, when I was still in Russia, seeing videos from someone who just immigrated to the US and tries to build their career? Yes, definitely.
So is that the reflection that you make to get over the imposter syndrome whenever you have
there
doubts?
are certain things that I do. First of all, I have a native speaking teacher who checks all my videos. And if I say something that's completely wrong. She's like, no, Marina, we have to cut this out. This is how you say that. Yeah, I feel like putting a system together helps.
Sure. And what about other aspects of your life? Like just your overall success or anything like that? Is there anything that you're like, should I be here? Or do you feel like, no, like I've worked my ass off. I deserve this success?
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm invited to things just because I'm a female.
Really?
Because they want this balance.
Right,
sometimes I come and I sit next to men who are much more successful. And I understand I'm on the panel because they wanted 50% men, 50%
that
women.
thing. Yeah.
But do I feel good about it? Yeah, why not?
Sure.
Like, of course, I'm not as successful, but it's great that they invited me.
Well, you also have to realize 50% of the audience is probably female of whatever you're going to. So they don't want to just hear from men. So you have this unique positioning that I think is important. So yeah, it makes sense. Well, Marina, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. That was a great interview.
I really appreciate it.
For great questions.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.